Okay, I'm still chugging along with these catch-up videos that I wanted to knock out this weekend. Next up is my classic match review for May 2017, but obviously now it's June 2017, so again, I'm running behind. But yeah, I'm just pounding these things out. Classic match review. The poll I pulled up on Twitter was for a match from King of the Ring 1993 specifically. A King of the Ring tournament match. The three matches were Lex Luger versus Tatanka from the first round, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect from the second round, and Bret Hart versus Bam Bam Bigelow in the finals. You ultimately selected Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect in the semifinals, and I'm more than happy to talk about that. But first, let me explain why I selected solely King of the Ring 1993 matches and didn't break out and select other matches from other King of the Ring tournaments throughout the years. The reason I did that was because I think King of the Ring 1993, as far as the tournament is concerned, is probably the best put-together tournament that the WWF, WWE ever did. When you look at how everything was booked, when you had Bam Bam Bigelow getting the bye to the finals, and the heel being super fresh, and Bret Hart having to just fight tooth and nail to get to the finals, and getting hurt along the way, and having very different matches with all three of his opponents, Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, and Bam Bam Bigelow. It made for a great, well-told story throughout the entire duration of the tournament, and throughout the show as a whole, actually. Bam Bam and Bret Hart actually closed out that pay-per-view, and it was just a very well put-together tournament, and not all of the King of the Ring tournaments were that well executed. Actually, a lot of the later ones, they would only do the final 2 rounds on the pay-per-view instead of 3 rounds to take up the entire show. So none of them were ever quite as good as that 1993 edition. And it's something that I wanted to just talk about and just praise the actual booking of that tournament and how they executed everything. I thought it was mostly very, very good. And I selected those 3 matches in particular because I think they all played a very important part in the story of the tournament working. Obviously, Bam Bam and Bret Hart was the finals. Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect, the only match from the semifinals. You know, it was whoever won this was going to have to go up against Bam Bam Bigelow in the finals, which is a tall order on its own. And it was like, man, these two guys are killing each other, and Bam Bam's super fresh. He only had to work the 1 match. So it set up some drama for the finals. And then you have Luger and Tatanka, which actually set up Bam Bam Bigelow's bye, because they were the 2 undefeated guys that went into this match, and you thought, oh, well, one of the undefeated streaks is going to come to an end. It went to a time limit draw, and with the time limit draw, that's a double elimination, and Bam Bam got the bye to the finals. So all 3 of those matches really played an important part in making the overall presentation of the tournament work really well. But like I said, I'm going to review Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect, so with that said, here we go. The thing I really liked about this match was that they referenced the history between the 2 guys. The last time these 2 guys worked with each other in a match was SummerSlam 1991. It was actually Mr. Perfect's last match until Survivor Series 92, when he tag teamed with Randy Savage up against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon in that match. But Bret and Perfect never had a rematch after that SummerSlam Intercontinental title match. It was one of the big kind of star-making matches for Bret, because it was his first singles title victory, and it was just an excellent match. It's one of the most famous matches from that era and from that year. It was, you know, just a great, technically sound match, but also had like this scrappy underdog in Bret Hart overcoming the well-established IC champion that was Mr. Perfect. So it had that story going for it. When Bret won, it was very satisfying and very cool to see. But there was no rematch after that until King of the Ring 1993, which Mr. Perfect made sure to reference in his pre-match comments prior to the match, where he said, "I haven't forgotten SummerSlam 91. And at this point, Mr. Perfect was a babyface. He had turned face when he joined up with Savage at Survivor Series 92. And, you know, he had ousted Ric Flair from the company in 93, one of the first major Raw main events. They had the loser leaves WWF match, and ultimately Mr. Perfect was victorious. He also eliminated Ric Flair from the 93 Royal Rumble and prevented Flair from having a two-peat. So there's that going for it as well. But so Mr. Perfect was pretty much established as a babyface by this point. And you had this match set up in the semifinals. Like I said, Bam Bam Bigelow's already gotten a bye to the finals. So whoever is going to go into the finals against Bam Bam is already in trouble. And the way it turns out, actually, one thing I did like on commentary, JR, who was just starting with the WWF at this point, he had made his debut at WrestleMania 9 and was still just only a few months in. He made a great call at the start. I think it was him who made it. It might have been Bobby Heenan. I don't know. But anyway, the commentary team made the call that if Perfect and Bret go to a draw, Bam Bam Bigelow wins the King of the Ring tournament without winning a single match, with only winning one match. And I think that was a nice little touch to make. And it's one of those little things. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a legitimate fear because it happened earlier in the show. So it's like the commentators, who are also characters in this story themselves, they're taking stuff that already happened and they're using it to, like, oh, God, I hope that doesn't happen here. And then we'll get Bam Bam as the winner just by default. That would be horrible. But, yeah, so I really like little touches like that. It's kind of like at WrestleMania 3 when Jesse Ventura was going crazy during the Andre Hogan match when they both went outside, and he's like, don't let this match end in a count-out. Actually, earlier in that show, Billy Jack Haynes and Hercules worked each other to a double count-out. So Jesse's comment and fear was legitimate based on what had previously happened in the show. So I like little touches like that when you can make little connections. But anyway, Bret and Perfect had once again, they had a very technically sound match. Mr. Perfect healed it up a little bit more for this. He didn't go full-blown heel, but he did heal it up a little bit. I think to, set up Bret better for the finals. Send him in as like the underdog babyface heading into the finals against Bam Bam. But, yeah, the two went out there, had another very good, technically sound match that you would expect out of them. Bret had been injured by Razor Ramon in his first match. Razor had stomped on his hand, so Bret had, like, his fingers taped up. And that played into various points in the match where Mr. Perfect was actually able to break out of the sharpshooter. As Bret was, like, kind of twisting the legs and trying to lock it on, Perfect, like, grabbed his hand and started twisting the fingers. And the pain forced Bret to stop trying to lock on the sharpshooter. And again, I love little touches like that where they're taking the events of the first match and they're having it play into the second match. So this feels like a middle chapter because the events of this match will then play into Bret's fatigue in the finals and set him up as even more of an underdog. So I like it when, again, actions have consequences and what happened in one match impacts another match later on. I like that kind of stuff when you're able to do that type of thing. And I think tournaments are tailor-made for that type of thing. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, that's like a squandered opportunity. I think I made the point that one NXT TakeOver, where it was the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, and Finn Balor and Samoa Joe won the tournament and were in the finals. Balor had gotten hurt. He had injured his leg in the previous match. But then when you watch the finals, like, the leg injury really played no impact into how the story was told. And actually, Balor got the win with the coup de grace. So it was kind of like, what was the point of the leg injury if it didn't really impact anything? So because of the hand injury, Bret Hart was not able to lock in the sharpshooter because Perfect just knew what to target. So again, that's one of those, like, minor psychology moments that probably doesn't mean a lot to other people, but it means a lot to me. And I love little details and little touches like that. And as expected, this match is excellent. I think it holds up very well. These two work great together. They're both, were two of the greatest workers, not just of their era, I would say of all time. And whenever you can see two greats go at it and really make magic happen, it's always a very satisfying experience. And like I said, it set up the finals beautifully, where Bret Hart would ultimately go on to defeat Bam Bam. But yeah, a great middle chapter in Bret Hart's road to the King of the Ring finals. I think the match came off very well. I would say probably the best match in the tournament. I really like Bam Bam and Bret too. Maybe that'll be a classic match review later on at some point. Maybe I'll just do a whole show review of King of the Ring 93. Yeah, really great match, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. It's a nice little gem, especially if you're a Bret Hart or Mr. Perfect fan.